Hello and Happy New Year. It's Matthew from Rosie and Rosie, investment property specialist, helping you invest in property with confidence. It's already halfway through January 2022 and the cusp of the peak for those of you trying to keep up with the pandemic. So I just wanted to give you a quick hello and to say a few things about what we've seen in the market over the last 12 months and what I think is going to transpire over the next 12 months. Looking back to the start of the pandemic, so December 2019, it was late January 2020 before Australia started to receive or record its first cases of coronavirus. And then by March, we started to hear about border closures and lockdowns and stimulus from the governments at various levels, state and federal. And prior to that, we were on the cusp of a rebound in the property market, which had been relatively flat, maybe with some modest growth, but there was a lot of panic that set in. If you remember toilet paper and hand sanitizer sales, the lockdowns did have a bit of an effect psychologically. People were a bit panicked generally, and so a lot of people who were looking at properties or looking to sell a property kind of sat on their hands for a little while. But then as the year or 2 years progressed, the effect of being locked down was that not necessarily lockdown, but the effect of border closures meant that people just weren't travelling. They weren't driving to work, they were working from home, so they were saving money on fuel or public transport and or car parking. They weren't buying that coffee in the cafe every day around the corner from the office, weren't having lunches out, weren't going out for dinner during the week, weren't holidaying, weren't going interstate, weren't going overseas. Generally saving a lot of money. These expenses that they would normally have made unconsciously just weren't happening. And so for a lot of people, their deposits became quite healthy. The cash rate set by the Reserve Bank in this time went from 0.75% down to 0.1%. So money became very cheap to borrow. And so with healthier deposits and low interest rates, a lot of people looked into property, whether they were downsizing, upsizing, first home buyers. Obviously there was the builder's grant happening as well. And we've seen some extraordinary growth across Australia in property prices. We've also in South Australia enjoyed, I guess, a bit of a population growth spurt from people returning from overseas or from interstate. A lot of people have left Victoria in the last 2 years. Victorians endured the worst lockdowns for the longest period of time, and South Australia and Queensland have enjoyed a large number of those Victorians leaving and coming into their states or our state. So we've had an extraordinary couple of years, some great price growth. Similarly with the rental market, we've had a lot more demand on rental properties, and so rental prices have increased. There was a period there where people were fearful about their jobs, with JobKeeper and JobSeeker. The government put there was a ban on evictions due to COVID-related issues, basically, and we were asked to be quite sympathetic, and were sympathetic to people's needs where we could. And that was quite a stressful time, both for renters and for landlords. Landlords looking to have to make ends meet too. It was a tough time, but it feels like we've come through that as vaccination rates have increased and restrictions have eased. There seems to be a little bit more positivity around and comfort around the rental market, but there's still a lot of demand, so much demand for rental properties. Anything that's going on the market is getting rented out very quickly, and renters are aware of the high demand and are completing their applications ahead of time, sometimes offering more than the asking rent, sometimes offering to pay multiple weeks or months in advance, which is extraordinary. So I guess that brings us to now, where where vaccination rates are up to about 90%. We're on the cusp of this little peak, but after that, the government's suggesting that the worst will be behind us. At least I hope it will be. And you would expect then restrictions to ease and borders to open and travel to occur more freely. After which I would expect some of those healthy deposits that people have accumulated over the last 2 years to start to dwindle as people go back to work, travel and spend that money. Interest rates will eventually go back up. The cash rate will eventually go back up. So there's a lot of things there that will hypothetically affect property prices. But with borders reopening, we'll also get those international arrivals coming back to our shores. It may not be straight away, but eventually I think we'll see the return of, firstly, probably the students, international students coming back to our cities. But then following that, I expect that we'll continue to get that population growth that we enjoyed prior to COVID from international travellers looking to migrate to Australia and set up homes here, starting with temporary and then permanent visas and ultimately citizenship, I guess, where they wish. So while we've got a few pressures coming that will put a ceiling on prices, we've also got a few pressures coming that will put more demand on properties, and so it's going to be an interesting 12 months. I know there's still plenty of buyers in the market. If you look at auction clearance rates published yesterday, 100% for South Australia. It was only 5 auctions, but it's a good sign that properties are still in high demand. A lot of homes being advertised without a price, asking people to contact the agent, or they're offering, they're asking for best offers by a particular date, or going to auction, which is all a sign of a hot market, whereby the agent isn't always comfortable giving a price range, because it could go, recently has gone much higher than it would have only 2 or 3 years ago. So, until that changes, I think we're in for a bit more growth in the property market. Vacancy rates are still under 1% in most suburbs in South Australia. I think that's probably my thoughts for the time being. If you have any questions or want to catch up for a coffee or a beer, we're located in Halifax Street now, so if you're in the area or walking past, do get in touch. We'd love to chat. But in the meantime, that's all for now. It's Matthew from Rosie and Rosie, helping you invest in property with confidence.